Wichita Liberty TV, featuring host Bob Weeks. Local politics without the spin. Interviews with nationally respected economists. Hear directly from Kansas conservatives about what matters to you. It's individual liberty, limited government, and free markets. Wichita Liberty TV.
Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and public affairs. It's broadcast on Great Plains Television Network, channel 26.1, also its companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you may know me from my blog, that's The Voice for Liberty at wichitaliberty.org. There the motto is individual liberty, limited government, free markets, and economic freedom in Kansas and Wichita. If you'd like to learn more about the issues covered today or to contact me, well, please visit wichitaliberty.org, subscribe to the email newsletter, like The Voice for Liberty on Facebook, and follow me, Bob Weeks, on Twitter. Well, is the Wichita City Council burdened with too many public hearings? Wichita's mayor seems to think so. Not long ago during a city council meeting, he asked staff if it was necessary to hold so many public hearings during council meetings. Now, it's not like the Wichita City Council is overburdened with citizens wanting to speak at public hearings. Yes, once in a while when the council is considering something really important like renaming the airport, many people will want to speak. But by and large, the routine business of the council is conducted with little input from the public. This includes the dishing out of grants, tax abatements, and other favors worth millions to council members, campaign contributors, and cronies. Many public hearings draw no speakers at all. For others, maybe one or two citizens will appear and offer an opinion. Yet, it has become commonplace for our new mayor and council members to carp about the length of city council meetings. But for Wichita Mayor Jeff Longwell, too many public hearings means, well, too much community engagement, or maybe too much of his time wasted. He didn't say which exactly, but I think I know what he meant. Oh, and the public hearing where the mayor brought up his concern about wasting time with too many public hearings? No one wanted to speak at that hearing. This is taking place in a city that just last month received an award for, in part, community engagement, which tells us a lot about the worth and validity of these awards. You remember last year how the city held over 100 meetings with citizens to get input from the people. And based on that, the city felt confident that the people wanted a sales tax to pay for a variety of things. But in the actual election last November, the sales tax was defeated, and defeated soundly. Well, so much for the city's community engagement. Another way the city does community engagement is through something called Activate Wichita. It's a website described by Wichita city officials as an online conversation about the future of the greater Wichita metropolitan area. A graphic and link to it is featured prominently on nearly every web page on the Wichita City website. And its companion Facebook page says, Activate Wichita is an innovative new way to be heard on the issues you're passionate about. Whether your passion is local arts, the environment, or employment creation, you can log on and voice your opinion and local leaders will respond. Together, communities come up with solutions and vote on the best course. Well, for what it's worth, the first time the city used the word "your," as in you're passionate about, it uses Y-O-U-R instead of the proper Y-O-U''re. I don't think this misuse of grammar reflects well on Wichita, I'd say. At one time, Activate Wichita was a pretty nice system. But for a system designed to be an interactive conversation with the entire city, well, it seemed like there were never very many people talking. And maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I didn't see local leaders responding. But there was a real problem with the system. When citizens were asked to rate ideas, to express their opinion on things, well, that was the problem. Your choices for voting on an idea were you could say, I love it, or I like it, or it's okay, or you could say neutral. And that was it. There was no voting option for expressing disagreement or disapproval with an idea. Neutral was as much dissent as Wichitans were allowed to express in this system. And this would be for questions like, should we increase funding through more sales tax or more income tax? Where was the option for people to say no new taxes? So on this system that city leaders say they rely on for gathering citizen input, there needed to be a voting selection that expressed disagreement or disapproval with an idea. Otherwise, when votes are tallied, the worst that any idea can be rated is neutral. That was a problem. Notice I've been speaking about Activate Wichita using past tense. That's because sometime earlier this year, Activate Wichita changed. Now the site is entirely different, with much less functionality. As of December 3rd, the most recent post by the city was dated November 2nd, and the post before that was dated September 16th. All the old content is gone. And on the companion Facebook page, it's been almost a month since there has been a post. Now, if someone comes along the Activate Wichita site, they would see something that can be described, charitably I'd say, as pathetic. It is a site that appears to have been largely abandoned. Yet the city continues to promote this site. The city prominently promotes the site. The fate of Activate Wichita combined with the city's continued promotion of it is something that works against the city, not in its favor. And by the way, did you know the city increased the size of its communications staff by hiring a strategic communications director? He started work in April. But that's not all. In September, a man named James Chung visited Wichita. He grew up in Wichita until he left for college, and he now heads a New York-based strategy, research, and predictive analytics firm. He's been invited to Wichita several times to speak to different groups about Wichita, its past, and its future. In the presentation I attended, he showed a page from the Omaha Chamber of Commerce and another from Des Moines. These pages both were fresh and modern, with lots of relative content that promoted the city in a positive way. Well, then he showed a similar page from the Wichita Chamber of Commerce site. There was a big difference, a difference not in Wichita's favor. We cannot be proud of our Chamber of Commerce once we see what other cities have done. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. Well, this week the Wichita City Council considered a change to campaign finance laws. Currently, corporations, political action committees, and unions are not allowed to make campaign contributions to candidates. The proposal before the council this week was to remove that prohibition. And as I do from time to time, I attended the council meeting and offered testimony. Here's what I told the council. Well, regarding the current matter, some council members and citizens have expressed concern that allowing contributions from corporations, PACs, and unions will somehow taint City Hall. This view is naive and doesn't really reflect the reality of current campaign finance practice in Wichita, which is what I call the stacking of contributions from multiple members of interested groups. For example, a frequent practice is that a business might have several of its executives and their spouses make contributions to a candidate. Because the contributions are made by multiple people, the money is contributed within the campaign finance limitation framework. But the net effect is a lot of money going to a candidate's campaign in order to advance the interests of the business, thereby circumventing the intent of campaign finance laws. Here's a few examples. In January 2012, Councilmember James Clendenin received 9 contributions of $500 each from executives of Key Construction and their spouses. Oh, $500 is the limit for how big a campaign contribution can be. And another group of people associated with movie theater owner Bill Warren gave $5,000 to Clendenin's campaign. And over a 2-day period in April 2012, Councilmember Levanta Williams received 8 campaign contributions of $500 each from Key Construction executives and their spouses. Now, for both of these candidates, these were the only campaign funds they raised in 2012, the year before both stood for re-election in the next following spring. As you can see, these two business firms have effectively stacked campaign contributions to contribute as much as they wanted. And I might note that this council routinely votes to award Key Construction various economic incentives, including no-bid contracts that turned out to be overpriced when later put to competitive bid. And in the summer of 2012, the council dealt with the matter of the contract for the new Wichita Airport terminal. Key Construction was a party to that dispute. Yes, that's the same Key Construction that stacked campaign contributions to the Clendenin and Williams campaigns. Now, it doesn't matter whether council members Clendenin and Williams voted in favor of Key Construction or not. The fact that they received so much campaign funding from a party involved in a contract dispute means that these council members should not have voted on this matter. This calls out for campaign finance reform. In speaking of the airport contract, then Councilmember Jeff Longwell, now our mayor, received $3,250 in 7 campaign contributions from executives and spouses of Walbridge, a Michigan construction company. These arrived to his campaign just before and after Longwell voted on the airport contract dispute. Now, why was Walbridge in Michigan interested in Jeff Longwell's campaign for county commissioner? Well, Walbridge was partners with Key Construction on the bid for the Wichita Airport contract. And besides these stacked campaign contributions from Walbridge, Longwell has benefited from the same stacking of contributions from Key Construction over the years as he voted to award incentives and overpriced no-bid contracts to Key. Ladies and gentlemen, I told the council, let us not delude ourselves. The people who want to get things from the city council know what to do. They stack campaign contributions as high as they want. Allowing these companies to make an additional $500 contribution in the company's own name, it's not going to change things very much. The campaign finance reform that Wichita really needs is quite simple. It's called a pay-to-play law, and it can be as simple as this. A council member shall not participate in, nor use his or her official position to influence a decision of the city council if it is reasonably foreseeable that the decision will have a material financial effect, apart from its effect on the public generally, on a recent major campaign contributor. In other words, you can make contributions to campaign contributions to candidates. That's important because political contributions are a form of speech. And you can ask the council to give you contracts and other stuff. But you cannot do both. That's a reform we need. Now, after I presented that testimony, I said I would answer questions. And there was a question. I'm going to let Joseph Ashby describe what happened. So here's an excerpt from the Joseph Ashby show that he broadcast the following day.
And so every once in a while, Bob will get a mayor upset with him. And that happened today. So Jeff Longwell responds with this.
Bob, can you name one no-bid contract in the last 10 years that was awarded?
Puts him on the spot, right? Smoking gun evidence that Bob Weeks is concerned about. Nothing. Now, was no-bid contracts the focus of Bob Weeks' presidency? No. Was it a small little sliver of it? that Jeff Longwell thinks he can embarrass him on? Yeah, that's what it was. Unfortunately, Bob Weeks knows a lot more than Jeff Longwell knows that he knows.
Yes, it was the contract for the garage at Douglas Place.
That was not.
So Bob, on the spot, is like, yep, the Ambassador Hotel garage was a no-bid contract that the city council awarded.
That was a bid contract, Bob.
And you have James Clendenin shaking his head next to Bob. Next to Jeff Long. Nope, that was a bid of like, nope, nice try, fat man. I'm not saying that Bob is fat. I'm saying that Jeff, that face at him. I'm just saying facial expression because you can't see the face that he's making. And so he's like, nope, that was a back. So now Longwell thinks he has him again. Not as smart as Bob.
After Councilmember O'Donnell objected, it came back to the council after competitive bid, but it was awarded.
The curious case of the Ambassador Hotel garage. What's his name? Was this Bill Wilson that did this one? Wichita City Manager proposes eliminating no-bid construction projects. Yes, Bill Wilson, before he went to the Wichita Business Journal. And swore up and down that there was no corruption in City Hall. Remember that? And he wouldn't come on the show to talk about it. And he unfriended me on Facebook about it. Yes, our media is full of children. Anyway, Bill Wilson had this big, long story about how we need to have bidded contracts, and we need to end the policy that allows no-bid contracts to take place. Layton, city manager, said last week that he intends to ask the city council for a policy change against those no-bid contracts. The contracts became an issue after city council members Michael O'Donnell and Pete Meitzner forced the city to take bids on the city-financed 300-stall parking garage adjacent to the privately funded Ambassador Hotel in Wichita at Douglas and Broadway.
Well, I don't know why our mayor and vice mayor believe what they do. The fact of the no-bid contract is easily proven by looking at city council meeting minutes and several newspaper articles. It's proven by the reforms the city manager proposed as a result of this no-bid contract. I think that Mayor Longwell is rationalizing and defending the situation by saying that the contract was never awarded because it was withdrawn before work actually started. That is hair-splitting to the extreme. It reminds me of how President Clinton explained things. And it overlooks the plain meaning of the ordinance that Longwell voted for. And by the way, the casual observer might not detect the stacking of campaign contributions by looking at campaign finance reports. That's because for city offices, the name of the company a contributor works for is not required. They have to list the industry and occupation, but these really aren't of much help. Someone has to investigate. That's what I did to understand the stacking of campaign contributions. And further, campaign contribution reports are not filed electronically, so the information is not easy to analyze. Some reports are even submitted using handwriting, and barely legible handwriting at that. Well, these are a few simple reforms that could be implemented easily, but no one in charge seems to want to do these things. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. As more people in the Wichita area realize that our economy has not been growing very well, there's a lot of soul-searching going on. Often the city and our leaders say we should rely on entrepreneurship to produce economic growth. Here's a video from the Kauffman Foundation that examines some of the myths surrounding entrepreneurship. And let me ask you, do you see how the video addresses some of the things Wichita is doing? Is Wichita doing the right things or the wrong things?
Dane Stengler, Kauffman Foundation, Vice President of Research and Policy. Entrepreneurship itself is not a cohesive discipline. One of the great things about entrepreneurship, but also one of the frustrating things from a research perspective, is that it touches a wide variety of disciplines. The nature of research, its purpose is to take a step back, remove itself from day-to-day biases. But no matter what you produce, if it's got 10,000 data points and it's perfectly controlled and randomized, the human nature response to anything is, I had an experience doing this and it contradicted that, so that's wrong. We're always going to base things on our personal experience. And that's where you get a lot of myths, misinformation, self-interested, biased positions. There are several areas in which I think our research and the research of those we fund has been making headway in, if not disproving, at least pushing back against conventional wisdom or what turn out to be myths. The principal one, I think, would be that small businesses are the most economically important part of the U.S. economy. New businesses and young businesses are actually more economically important than small businesses. There's a lot of overlap, but age of the firm is a more important variable than the size of the firm. It's new and young companies that create most jobs and innovations, not necessarily small companies. A second myth would be the age of entrepreneurs. Multiple studies have increasingly gone against the conventional wisdom that either all entrepreneurs or the most important entrepreneurs are those footloose and fancy-free 23-year-olds starting tech companies in their local coffee shop at their bedroom. You still see the popular stereotype of magazine covers or television coverage about young entrepreneurs. Those exist, and they're important, but it's by and large true that the quote-unquote peak age for starting a company is in mid to late 30s, early 40s. A third myth would be the geography of entrepreneurship. Silicon Valley is a very unique place that's never going to be replicated by other places, and so we all need to stop trying to be a Silicon fill in the blank, not just in the US, but anywhere around the world. Our most recent one that we've been myth-busting has been about the role of incubators. Most research shows that incubators are not effective at all for actually producing companies. There's a lot of money at stake in the world of entrepreneurship. A lot of people have an interest in whatever viewpoint they're tied to. We don't make a lot of friends if we go out and say, that thing you're trying, it actually is probably not going to work. That also puts the onus on us to have a constructive alternative. So that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, is trying to not only harvest the research on the myths, but also trying to propose constructive alternatives.
Well, in the video, did you hear that it is new businesses and young businesses that are economic drivers? It's not necessarily small business. Young and small are not the same. But I don't get the sense that our leaders understand the difference. Also, there was mention of the research showing that incubators, business incubators, don't work very well. Yet, incubators are a major part of Wichita's strategy, both at City Hall and at Wichita State University. Now, it's not that incubators are bad, it's just that they are not as good as you might think. So the danger is that we are about to repeat a pattern. We do things that look like they should work. Then we believe the problem is solved. Then, years later, we wonder why the Wichita economy is doing so poorly. I'm afraid this cycle is repeating. Well, that's all this week for Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks.